Hey everyone, and welcome to the AI Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have technologist Shubhangi Goyal on the podcast. Welcome. It's so great to have you with us. Let's dive into our first question. What's your technology origin story?
Uh, so firstly, I'm glad to be on the podcast. Thank you, Sam. Hi guys, I'm Shubhangi. I have been working in the space of technology for like 9 years now. I was born and brought up in India, and obviously, like any other nice Indian person, I did engineering.
Hmm.
And when I was young and I was in high school, I used to love programming. And I remember one of the first languages I learned was Basic. You know how to draw commands using the Basic
Mm-hmm.
language, and I think that was really the start of the journey. And from there, learning Java and then like different other programming languages throughout the course of my life. I pursued computer science engineering, like because I had a passion for like learning about computer systems, how they operate, how do networks work, and like everything else in between. Pursued a job after that as well at Tata Group, mostly focused on like data development, BI, and it's like in that journey, like somewhere I also recognize that I do like working with a lot of data stuff as well.
Mm.
So I decided to pursue masters, and that brought me more than 8,000 miles to the UK, which is quite interesting like thing. It's a whole different story altogether though.
Hmm.
And I went to University of Bath. I studied business analytics there. um by the way, don't like get confused when you I say business analytics. Like it was completely programming oriented course.
Oh yeah.
And I had a lot of cool subjects that included like data science, machine learning models,
Hmm.
working on simulation. And I remember I did my dissertation on natural language processing and semantics. um, and yeah, and like it feels like a long time back. And then I did my first job here in the UK, which was for an AI startup. I was there for 5 years, worked
Mm.
on a lot of language modeling, natural language projects. Obviously, in that period, large language models also came. Obviously, ChatGPT 3.5, one of the, like I would say, one of the old models, and then so on. And yeah, now I work at Admiral. I work as a senior analyst there. And yeah, the journey has gone on, like it has been going on. I'm quite passionate about like what we can create using technology. Always have been, and want to use it for like creating good products, good applications which people can actually use and benefit. Also very passionate about like social causes and like social change. So I also lead the London chapter for women in data, like mostly for women who want to build their careers, like in like technology. And they can come from any walk of life and they find a space for themselves in that area. Also a Microsoft MVP in AI platform, mostly around Azure AI Foundry. And then I've also spoken like in 10 countries and counting, mostly on data and AI topics, because I like to share my knowledge and also gather more like information and knowledge about from other people, because I believe everybody has something to offer, and it's best when shared. So yeah, that's me, and that's my technology origin story.
Brilliant. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, then just, yeah, I mean, so much lovely stuff in there. You mentioned originally programming in BASIC, which I think, yes, also was my first programming language. I'm sort of thinking about it a bit more recently because I'm watching a documentary on Amazon, which is The Rubber Keyed Wonder, and that was about in the 1980s. We had the ZX Spectrum come out in the UK, and that was my first computer, and I programmed in BASIC on that one. It's and there's a kind of re-released version that I might be getting for Christmas. So lucky me. But
Nice.
yeah, yeah, oh, great stuff. And well, yes, absolutely. Women in data, the social cause is brilliant. And it's what a journey. It's fantastic. And it's great that you're getting out there and speaking and sharing. That's absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing the story with us. And of course, you already mentioned the LLMs and so on, and that, I guess that slides us right into our next question, which is like, how is our AI affecting your life and work? And of course, back in the day, we saw people. I mean, I remember being in a meeting in Japan in a with a sort of consulting group, and this was what was this, like in 2001 or two or something. And I remember one of the guys, like they were basically pitching this thing, and one of the guys at the end of the meeting was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to add some AI stuff to that." And I was like, the business surprises people kind of believe it was like, okay, sure, AI. But at that point, no, like you're just standing
Yeah.
up a database, right? You're not doing. But actually, the word AI is now refers to a particular class of remarkable technology. And yeah, I'd love to hear about how that's affecting what you do at work and also outside of work. I'm finding uses, all sorts of uses outside of work. But yeah, yeah, what's all going on?
Yeah, I think it's a this is a very interesting question. I think like AI, like I think AI has been in the world in a way for a long time.
Mm,
I think when OpenAI created ChatGPT 3.5, I think like it was more like you got an interface sort of it.
mm,
I think in terms of impact, I think it's impacting basically everything in at the moment.
mm,
Like one of the major reasons why people want to use AI is because they believe or they feel that it can automate things and it can save time and money, which is like mostly from the business lens. But
mm,
then like a lot of normal people also see AI as a means, like they used to use, for example, browsers to like search
mm,
information, but they they feel like probably more comfortable now using, I don't know, like any of the AI platform. So I think it has created impact not just for somebody who is building the platform, but also like for normal users. In
mm,
terms of building the platform, obviously like the models kept on evolving. We had 3.5, 4 mini, 5, then 5.1, and like the other companies like Anthropic has Claude, multiple versions of Claude, and so on. I think with the large language models, I think they're quite powerful and have capability to do a lot more. In terms of building platform, I would say it requires a lot more like grounding and cementing. Like you have to like make sure that the right sort of data is being used if you are trying to build like an enterprise scale application.
mm,
I think from the builder's lens, I can certainly say that like that helps to enhance the way they perform, um, putting out the like the right context, which is very much tailored to whatever business application that you are trying to create. And large language models can actually like understand what is the scenario you are talking about, because like they're like they need to understand what we need, like what we are asking for, and if they don't understand exactly, then we cannot expect a good outcome from it. And imagine like we are creating an application used by like a 60-year-old person, or maybe like 55-year-old person. Maybe like they haven't studied or they haven't known everything, and it creates something which is not like verified, or
mm,
it creates like a false link. So then it's a problem, right? Because you want your application to be reliable and trustworthy and accurate as well. So I think these are some of the things which are, I can tell, from the builder's lens. And then if I talk about from the user perspective, I think I can see people using AI for like as simple as like creating their travel itinerary, to also writing code. But I think like especially like when in terms of coding, I think it's still important to have foundational knowledge, because like there could be bugs and errors like in your code, and if you haven't like known enough of like whatever programming language you use, you could actually still run into some of the issues. It definitely like blurs a lot of lines, but I think it's still important from my perspective that um for anybody who is trying to find, let's say, a role today, and thinks like I can just like use AI for like all of this stuff, but I think still having knowledge would be important to like build those systems. And I think the other thing really is like using, how do you use prompts as well, because like programs were written in like Java previously, or C++, or we use SQL for like databases maybe, and we use like other languages for different platforms. It's crucial to understand that prompt is one of the way we also communicate with the large language models, or like get information out of them or make them do the work. So crafting like good prompts is also like a means. And I think some people have seen like they like when they get one answer and they think like the LLM is hallucinating. It's important to also see like how you have crafted and written your prompt, because sometimes it's also like there isn't enough information provided to the large language model, and that leads to like unreliable outcomes from them. So in terms of use cases, you can ask like there are tons and tons of use cases, like as I said, as basic as like designing a travel itinerary, could be as complicated as building like a enterprise scale platform. But I think the key really lies is like if you're trying to build something which you want to be used by B2B, or like B2C, or like something more solid, then obviously a lot more engineering, proper AI engineering grounding and building like the right rag models. And obviously the governance is needed because your data, it becomes really really crucial, like in these applications. So yeah, like these are some of the ways that AI is impacting like all parts. Like it basically is impacting how the builders look at systems now, and how end users now look at like life in day-to-day world. Like, oh hey, I want to like I want to go here. So they'll just try to prompt on any AI platform and just want to know information out of it. So yeah, it's impacting, it's making things faster, but again, like um finding the right use case, I think, is also the key here, and then like giving the right prompt.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. You're saying like the AI was always there, and OpenAI with ChatGPT kind of gave it, like access to it. I mean, I guess I mean, perhaps from my slightly longer perspective, I mean, I think people were referring to AI systems, back in the 50s and 60s, and there was like things doing logic and reasoning, but none of them had anything like the ability that I think we've seen from, the new transformer-based architecture since effectively from 2017. I think before 2017, I mean, there was some sort of impressive things, but there was you just didn't get the sense
Yeah.
that any of the systems really understood what you were talking about or could sort of handle this sort of genericness, or sort of like handle human language in a way that's like the way that humans handle it. So it's definitely been a huge change. And yeah, I mean, I guess there's, I mean, the thing I wrestle with is about the LLMs, whether they understand or not. I mean, I think from a lot of my personal experience using LMs and a lot of people I discuss it with, it often feels like they are just very inconsistent. And so like you can ask for something and in a certain way it's like, oh yes, it seems like it understood and it did it. But then as you carry on the conversation, it then makes sort of trivial mistakes, or it just, it gets quite confusing. I feel like there's still a way for the technology to go. I mean, you gave a sort of like very general answer, which is great, sort of setting the scene. I guess when I was thinking about like how it affects your life, so the example, it's not getting boring, that I give is I was having trouble with the light in my son's room ceiling. Like, it's not actually the bulb, not just the bulb, like the fixture. And I was like, oh, I could get a new fixture. And but with ChatGPT on my phone, I took a photo of the fixture. I mean, I had to take the fixture out of the ceiling. I took a photo of it, and with ChatGPT, it helped me find what was the actual place where I could get the correct fixture that would work with this thing. And actually, so much of the time, I think when you're using an LLM, it can generate something that looks like the right solution, and then you look a bit deeper and it's actually, oh, actually, particularly when it comes to code, for example, it's maybe not doing the right thing. But I think these, the you can cast aspersions on, oh, there's huge loads of AI slop and code coming out. When you help an individual person, like here, a father trying to fix the light in his son's room, and it demonstrably works, that's quite a testament to the power of the technology, even if it has some shortcomings. But I wonder, like, do you find yourself using ChatGPT on your phone, or you're using audio mode? Are there like specific examples from your life outside of work, or when you're using it at work, that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I use it on my phone, and I mean, sometimes obviously on my machine as well. I like, as you said, example of like, you're fixing like a light bulb. I mean, obviously there are always those use cases. Like I've used them for like used it for like several different things. Like for example, like I was trying to find like summarize a document, and it was like a big document, had like 40, 50 pages, and obviously I didn't have time to read the whole thing. So I
Mm,
wanted to summarize it like in like 2 pages, or maybe like one.
sure.
Just give me like what the main thing is, because I didn't have enough time for it. Like, it could be like, for example, I was like trying to find the right flight for somewhere, and
Right.
I did like open Skyscanner, for example, or like other websites, but I was like in a rush. Like, and I was like, I gave the link for the page I have. Can you please find the right suitable flight? And I gave some conditions at this and that. So it did give a bunch of good options, which helped me to like find the right. So it did cut
Mm,
down a lot of time, which I would say I would have taken longer, because I tend to like check multiple websites and see which
mm,
can give me like a better time, plus like cost, plus also like all the things I need. Um in terms of like other things, like I was trying to like check like location, and I did not know what that location is, so I just uploaded that picture on like Gemini,
Oh
and it
yeah.
did recognize like, okay, this location is in Spain. So I was trying to find like, so yeah,
Oh
it did
wow.
work. Yeah, so it did work. But I think again, like it, you cannot say it works accurate all the time. Sometimes it will obviously hallucinate, but it depends on how much clear input you give. Like if the picture is probably too blurry, maybe
Mm.
not so much success. But if like you have given the right like sort of link or document or whatever you are seeking, higher chances of getting success in that. But I also always believe like it's best to like double check things and verify, essentially, because as a, if you are like doing these sort of like, because you don't want to get like at the end, oh, I have done this whole thing and now I have to like start from scratch. I think in terms of like work life, I think like uh I feel like everybody right now does use AI in some capacity. I think it's definitely there and it's all out. Like, but I think like what you use it for is like the key. Like, I think if you are using it for repetitive tasks is fine, because like anyway, like it will reduce that burden of time that you have, like extra time, and like you can use it for some more efficient tasks, because there are always technical backlogs and there are always things to do. It's, I don't think, I've never seen that case, where there's somebody saying, "Oh, hey, I don't have anything to do." I have not seen that from my experience so far. I think it's surely good for that. But I mean, again, like if you are specifically working on a targeted industry, then I mean, for example, some if somebody thinks I'll just give it a report and generate an outcome, I don't think that will work, because you will still have to check the numbers. And then again, like um, data is crucial, right? Like you cannot just put in anything. You have to make sure that you have certain checks in place, you have verified it, you have given the right information and prompt, and then still you might need one layer of check, like verification and stuff. So I think uh repetition and automation is basically where like anything can be done repeatedly. But I think like still for very important tasks, you have to still be checking all those things, or you have done enough work to build like some sort of agent or a system or internal platform. Many companies have done that right now, but obviously they have limited use cases then in that case. And then I think every time you use a large language model, if you're implementing through a platform, you will have API calls, and then cost. All those things are also have to be accounted for. I don't think it's a straight line in that sense. So if you are accounting for that, then hey, you have built a good platform. You can like cover all the blind spots. But like if you haven't thought about this, then there will be a ceiling you will hit at some point, because like process optimization and how you have built is extremely important. It's like the data that you use, it's like a large ocean, and you have to decide what like part of that ocean you want to set your model at. Can't be taking all like so many parameters, and like I will float my ship wherever it wants to be.
Yeah, oh well, no, brilliant. I love that example of having a photo and not sure where it was from, and then getting that information. That I mean, that's a great example, and I think in that situation, like you're saying, like I mean, if the photo's too blurry, I think most people using AI, in that context, like if I've given a half-formed query and it doesn't get it right, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's really interesting you mentioned about document summary. I mean, we had John Leslie, who's a senior manager at Vodafone, on the podcast, and he was talking about how he thought he got a lot of value from Microsoft Copilot summarizing documents and so on. And I guess that this is the thing: is I'm always worried with the document summaries. Is like, how accurate are the summaries? Is it missing that individual piece of information? I guess there's a lot of situations where, do you know what I mean? You wonder if maybe it did. It's just it's so difficult to really assess, is
Mm.
this summary good enough? Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
like th like the sort of like the feedback delay on, oh, like I was in this meeting and I didn't have this piece of information. Like the feedback cycle is so slow. And then I also, and part of my mind is like I'm, you know, like actually how important, like it's maybe if you're using it for document summary in an area of drudgery, how important were the very, very long documents that you were actually looking at? Could you have just done your job without needing to know the summary, or is it kind of like busy work? I think it's just so difficult to know and to assess sometimes. But yeah, maybe that's less important. As you're saying, like in the the context of like coding and data. I mean, I find myself, and I use coding assist. I'm a sort of an AI first developer now, and I use coding. I mean, I'm particularly well. I'm on what is it, Claude Opus 4.5 High at the moment. I mean,
Yeah.
keep switching to try and get the best model. And I think that I mean, sorry, I'll connect this all up. I think one of the issues is that the models, they seem to be so confident all the time. Like, I think whether it knew that the photo really was in Spain or not, whether it will it, I think one of the problems with them is they tend not to come back and say I'm unsure. They tend to like say, oh yes, I know what the answer is. They're sort of like their confidence with which they interact with you is a bit too high. And so like if you ask it to do, some coding change, it will sort of come back and say, yes, let's do this. It's so rare that the model comes back and says, I'm not sure that's such a good idea. What you're asking to do is a bit, yeah, I don't know, like similarly with data. I mean, I'm doing like, recent exploratory data analysis, and it will, big SQL queries that would take, and it's giving me, like, oh, here's this data and what have you. And I do feel slightly uneasy. It's kind of, it's tempting to take it at face value. And then they're like, what level of checking are you actually doing? I mean, so in your day to day, are you using coding assistants to help you generate code to get things done?
Um, in day to day, I think I use it very limited at the moment because
Mm,
like yeah, because I prefer to like do things on my own. But like whenever I feel like there is some issue or like I am trying to solve a bug, I will take the help at that time. But I think you did raise a good point. Like they're always so sure. Like how do we even know? Like even with PDF generation. So I think there are different lens to it. I think the first thing is like if you're just taking a random document and you just want a quick summary out of it, right? I mean,
mm,
generally, like when you have a document, you at least know what it is about on like
mm,
very, very high level, right? If your goal is to just quickly assess and understand like the main gist of it, it's just a different use case. But if you are working for an industry where you are having a like a proper documentation, that's a different case altogether. I don't think they are the same thing. So if you're using it for personal use, then like maybe you are not like caring about every single depth of every single metric, everything documentation, key takeaways, everything probably. So you might want to just get like a high level summary. But again, like on top level, you know what document is about, but you want to see the content of it. And then I think it's also about how you craft the prompt. Like if you want really, really detailed summary, like what is the message from each page, each paragraph, then you obviously have to ask for that kind of information. But again, like if you, I would say if the use case is like how do we verify it, then I would suggest building something solid where you have validations in place that like this is the outcome I'm expecting, this is what I get, and then probably run like few test cases before actually trying to use it. I don't think like those two things are same. They're quite different because you have to see the lens you're using it for. If you're using it for like just personal use, people have actually created like small agents for their own personal use also. So I think that's the one thing. And then I think like about coding assist and using those tools for let's say day-to-day work and then providing information. I think in like if you're working in a job which requires coding, as I said in the start, like even though you use AI or whoever uses AI, you still have to have some foundations because like there are parts you might feel like I don't think that's quite right, or because you have that as subject matter expertise, you can like point it out and see it. But completely relying on a tool to generate something might not be like something completely like reliable at the moment. Yeah, because like imagine you wrote like a 500,000 line worth of code or maybe longer, and some like issue came, and now hey, you have generated with AI. Now you don't know how to fix it. So it's good to take help. It's not like wrong, but I think it's also important to understand the basics and the concepts of how the things work, how the code is written, and so on. And then again, like for example, in that image example I gave, so I gave an image, and frankly I knew it was from Spain. I just wanted to test it, like where is it
okay.
from. And obviously it basically gave me Spain, and then also the location in Spain where it was in Madrid. And I was actually surprised because the image was okay, it was not that great, but when I gave a more blurry image, it didn't obviously spot
Mm,
the right place. It just said it's some beach location.
hmm
And I think other examples I tested, for example, minimum viable product. So
Hmm.
I gave like, oh, what is MVP? Like, or like, what is some random words. So it gave me a bunch of options asking like, it could be anything. So could you pick what is yours? So I feel like in those cases, it's trying to maximize the chances of giving you an answer, but still asking for clarification in that sense. Obviously, it will not come and say I don't know, because it's not, they've designed it in such a way that they will always produce some sort of answer for you.
Mm.
I think like at the end of the day, like if you are the one who is the end user of it, then it like the basically who has accountability to like make sure that the outcome is correct, right? So that's where all the questions being discussed right now around like accuracy, reliability, user accountability, explainable AI comes into place. And then um, I think that's where like there is a black box, who is responsible for those decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I mean this is particularly with ChatGPT recently. I think it's got a lot better at giving references. I mean there were early stories, of like it just like making up loads of references, and now it provides the reference and the link, and you can click through, and that's reassuring. I mean, I feel like I'm happy for it to give me an answer. I think just it's the sort of the confidence that it puts into the answer is sometimes a bit too much. But you're talking about the programming. I mean, there's an interesting debate going on at the moment about this because some people have said that the AI produces so much code it can't be reviewed. And so there's a couple of, I mean, we had Ben Ritchie on the podcast recently, and he's a serial CTO, starts multiple companies. And I think maybe it particularly makes sense in the startup world where they're trying to stand up an MVP really, really quickly. But he said, and they have got to the point now where they do not review the code, and they are, I mean, I think it's like 500,000 lines of code, what have you. Well, what they review is they review the specification of what should be built and the test framework, and they've got it so that the tests, operate end to end, and the AI can't just like, break, can't just like remove the tests when things are not working. So they just let the AI churn away on it is like I mean, I guess in some ways, when you're talking to ChatGPT, it's from the outside, it's a black box. They're using the code, sorry, they're using the AI to generate code that is effectively a black box. But there's an extent to which they're saying we don't care about the internals of the code because the specification is correct and the tests are passing. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should suddenly switch over to doing that. I mean, it's not just Ben Ritchie. There's a famous person on got a YouTube up, and these people are saying, "Look, I know this sounds crazy, but yeah, it's a weird approach." But personally, I mean, I'm kind of like I'm doing a lot of like TD test-driven development, ping pong pairing with the AIs to make
Yeah.
sure that I understand the details as I go along. Because in a lot of personal projects where I've kind of vibe coded them, they've got to a point where I'm kind of like, "Oh," it ends up being a code because partly they can just generate so much code that you really can't review it all yourself. But it sounds like just going back to what you were saying in your on your own work, actually you prefer to develop yourself and you use the AI much like more like as a particular
Tailored.
thing
Yep.
comes up, you'll use it in a very targeted and
Yeah.
focused way. Is that right?
Yeah. I think the example that you gave of like creating a specification and then like running those test cases. See, here also they are still running the test case. There is
Mm,
still some
mm.
validations happening. It's not like without that. So even if you are saying that like it has generated a piece of code which we don't want to review, but you are still doing some testing, right? Like you're still providing some specification at the end of the day. It's not just like that specification, for example, is something you are giving that, hey, I want this kind of code, or this is my use case I'm solving for, this is the code I want. So I think like the bottom line here is like you can use the tool, whichever tool you want, but I think if you're not performing enough testing to make sure, yeah, as we all know, like it can land anywhere basically, because you have to make sure that the right testing is happening. Like even like building agents or building and like any platforms, right? People are using LLM as a judge, for example, as a technique to like measure the outcome, evals. There are a lot of things like right now. Different people are using different approaches. Some people also have like a part of like human oriented testing where like some people are specialists and they are also checking it after all the testing is done. So there are a lot of things people are doing to make sure, and this is only because they want to use the technology, but they also want to ensure like it's right. The outcome is right at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean like you, like generate as much code. Like there is no issue, but it's just as long as you know how to fix it if it like goes wrong
Well, I
and
think
you have
that's
testing.
yeah. I think these guys are maybe relying on the fact that the models are going to keep getting better, and
Yeah.
it's like they'll ultimately. Yeah, but I mean, it seems like in some ways, though, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying about the testing and the verification. But that was always the case, right? That
Yep.
hasn't that was true before when you had lots of humans programming it, when you had the AI programming it. But so it's interesting, and it sounds like in the work that you're doing, you've got the AI as a tool that you occasionally come in and fix things. Like in the past, you might have used Google and Stack Overflow and so on. But it sounds like that maybe your day to day programming experience or developing work experience hasn't changed that much as a result of the AI. It's like it's just summarizing a document for you. It's occasionally providing a bit of, but the sort of the fundamental work that you're doing, or maybe is it further downstream? Are you using AIs like to actually like deliver some of the downstream things, or would you say much has changed in your work as a result of the AI revolution?
So I will tell you, like, I've worked on a couple of projects. So one of the projects I worked was on voice speech to text, and it basically converted like input from one language into another.
Oh yeah.
And also, like, we had like a lot of different data from like different segments of like the like public sector. So essentially, when the first model was built, which was more like using a standard tooling, for example, like a cognitive service, and then obviously when you get large language model, you have a lot more capability because you can like train them. So we did the grounding on that data, like the old data that we had, like a whole lot of historical data, and the results were obviously better. And I think a lot of my role in that was I also did a lot of evaluation of those models, how they performed. And you can see that if you change the type of model you use, obviously the evaluation outcomes do change. And like for example, things like relevance, accuracy, the F1 score, precision recall, like the different metrics, like standard, like these are some of them are standard data science metrics. Some of them are like more tailored towards large language models. And so the experience does change. Like it depends on like what project you are working on. Like the some of the projects require like a lot more, like working on the evaluation part. Some require more on like working on the building part. When you are working on the building part, for example, you are focusing on like how the transcription is happening, what's the accuracy rate of the transcription, how many turns are there in a conversation, how many times somebody has to ask these questions and clarify until the large language model is able to figure out, hey, this is like the right, this is the way the answer will be stored. And then I think the other thing is, for example, some people also like to use shorter words when they communicate. So the large language model has to figure out what does that mean, because it's like us giving a prompt, right? So I've worked like on several different projects, not just from like an end user, but also from a builder's lens. That's why I'm telling you both situations happen. And I think like it's crucial to understand for like anybody who's building it, that how they work and how they're different from each other, like what's like slight differences that they have. Because when you test, you will find those gaps, like the differences in the outcomes. um, and especially like when you are analyzing the turns, so one conversation can have 100 turns or maybe more. Like it's like we are conversating, right? So if you think this is like you are chatting with, like for example, an AI agent or like something on that line, you can think how many turns we have had already, like every time we are conversating. um Obviously, like if you're trying to solve for a very targeted case, like as simple as I want to pay my tax, that's like a case, right? And like you want it to be solved, for example, in 4 or 5 turns, because you said I want to pay my tax. The agent will come and say, okay, can you give me your details, and you will share and so on. So but if let's say your turns are so much more higher, that means it is highly possible there have been a lot more clarifications needed in that pipeline, because at some point maybe the interpretation wasn't right, the answer wasn't right, maybe the right like the right question was not asked, or like the user didn't say the right words. There could be several cases. So I think, and like understanding and analyzing how the platform works becomes crucial in that aspect. And there are different tools in the market, like everybody is using their own. Some people are using, like for example, Vertex AI, and some people are using, for example, Azure AI. Some peers are also using in conjunction with LangChain and LangGraph, and so there are different things. But I think the bottom line again is like one thing which is similar across the board is like we want to optimize for efficiency. We want to have the right outcomes, and then make sure that the system that we had before and the system that we are trying to build now is better and significantly like faster than what we had before. So It does impact, like LLM does, like does transform and change thing. It just depends on the using the right use case. Like you don't need to like if you're trying to build something which is which needs speed, then LLM is probably like where everything will change, because like you have the right data, you have the right grounding in place. So yeah, like it's a lot of different playing parts, I would say, that actually make that thing work. I use a lot of builders prompt, basically like the prompts which are not just like, hi, can I get this information, can you give me this information, and not that kind of prompts I'm talking about, like more like system prompts where like you're telling it exactly this is what it is, this is how the things you have to understand. And like I also see like every time you like change the prompt, how the outcomes have changed slightly. So I think context, as I said in the start of my of this podcast, is really important, because the right context changes the way LLM interprets things, even if you are evaluating your model. I think the other thing really is like having multiple rounds of testing. I think negative testing is important. Like the system breaks when it has to break. It doesn't perform weirdly. Like I was on one of the talks, I think last month, somebody asked me, do you think like software engineering and AI engineering are different? So I gave like a solid answer, like comparing both of them. But I think I also want to ask you, because obviously you have significant experience. Like, what do you think? Do you think they are different?
Well, so software engineering versus AI engineering. Well, it's an interesting question about what falls into the category of AI engineering. I mean, I think ultimately the key element, which you've touched on, which I think is the testing and evaluation, is the same. I mean, the strangest thing about the AIs is that we've been working with, maybe I can use the example that you were giving. So you go great example of some projects that you've worked on where maybe you transitioned from some of the older natural language processing stuff to the LLMs. And when you would, I mean, being, for example, like an NLP specialist in software, and I'm forgetting the names of the pieces of software now. Oh, what's that? There's a big one, and there's a lovely lady from Spain who gives talks about her software. But anyway, my brain. But when one was doing sort of data engineering or software engineering with that, it still had the property of kind of um, you like it was sort of deterministic. Like, I mean, you might be connecting to an ML model, or you might be doing this sort of analysis of the text and what have you. And things had this kind of deterministic, you do this one thing and it does the thing. And then you could write a test that says, okay, yeah, let's make that or not have errors occur. And then, but sometimes the system will get so big that you might not understand what was going on. It would seem like it was sort of behaving a bit randomly, but still fundamentally, it's kind of like it's comprised of little building blocks that work in reliable, predictable ways the same time each way. And then the sort of, the things that had the probabilistic stuff, they were the models and they were sort of separate. And then so, and if you were calling something via an API, it was, you'd be saying like, right, we're going to call this API, and the API might be down, and you'd have to handle that and this, that, and the other. And the thing is, like now, I can have, for example, Whisper running on my local machine, which will take, do speech to text in
Yeah.
a way that just like in a way that's at a fidelity that just wasn't available in the past. And so you can actually start building systems out of these components that then have this, much less deterministic feel. They're much more probabilistic. And
Yeah.
so you kind of almost need a slightly different approach to testing. So my previous company, we were doing a lot of extracting structured data from unstructured data in like images of documents. And absolutely, as you're saying, like the prompt that you gave, just tweaking the prompt slightly could make a huge difference. But also, it wasn't entirely predictable. But so what we kind of critically had to have there was we had to have a test framework where we had a battery of like, here's like 300 documents that we've seen in the past, and here is the correct data that we've out that as verified by a human user. And then so when we would make a change to the prompt generally, rather than just, oh, that seems better, we
Yeah.
would run our battery of tests to say, okay, now how is that? And for every little change, some documents might be better matching what the human
Yeah.
had said, and some. So there's this kind of, I think, the AI engineering, it comes more over into the sort of ML, data science world, where
Yeah.
you have this respect for the kind of non-deterministic side of things. I guess that's what I'd say is the biggest difference. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
of course. I'm glad actually you did mention about the deterministic and the non-deterministic stuff, because I did work on another project, and so what happened was like there were two models. They were exactly same, and so one of the model had a deterministic setting and the other didn't. And when you test the both models on same question, like one of the model gave all the expected answers that you would want, and the other didn't give at all. And even if later on you turn on the setting, for whatever reason, it was not that accurate as the first model, and they were more or less similar, like
Mm,
in entirety, same topics, like same sort of like intents that you create. And one of the things, like if you know about like the way NLP work is like, when two topics are very similar, like very very close, like for example you're talking about tax, then paying the tax and refunding the tax, or something on that line, they're very similar topics in the same bigger topic. Now when, like when you give instruction, now they do like a probabilistic like a threshold value, right? And like they
mm,
try to find like, which is the best possible use case or the best possible match. um and then it was every time trying to hit and find the other one by a
mm,
very very minor value. So at that time, like what I did was I basically, I would say, isolate one from the other, essentially by changing some of the words so that the way it counts the prediction, it slightly changes. And it took several rounds to get that level of accuracy, because they're so similar and so close that even like if you try to just like ask a same question over and over again and run the test, like automated test, like it will just still give the wrong outcomes. I think it's like if you want precision, you have to really, like really really look into like how much important that is. I think one other thing I also want to mention is like, when testing is done, like a lot of people obviously want to prioritize that, oh my 85, let's say this percentage of data is good, like this outcome is giving me, this is the threshold value I've set. But sometimes you can also take historical data which shows you like which is the most frequent area you want to focus on. Like if you're, let's say, building an agent, you have historical data like 10,000 records, and you know that these are top 10 categories, for example, people are mostly talking about. This is like, let's say you are building a chatbot, but chatbot like in more form like advanced AI agent now. um so I think in those cases, like you can focus on that 80% of the data which will give you the most interactions, and then like you can still try to improve the 20%, but then 20% is where like probably users are not highly interested. So all in all, I'm trying to say is like the deterministic and non-deterministic value, they do make a lot of difference. I think it depends on when you go down deeper into like from one topic into like down to the level zero, that okay, I really want this probably 0.95 to like be 98 here, but it just, you have to change something. So I think it's interesting, like the way they operate is quite interesting, like from like a language model standpoint of view as well, because like at the end of the day, it's like trying to find the right and the best possible combination for whatever you are seeking. So
mm.
I'm glad like you did touch base upon it, because I was gonna speak about that, but yeah.
Great stuff. Yes. Well, and time's moving. Time's moving on. Any thoughts on leadership? You've been working with technology for a long time. How do you sort of what are your thoughts on leadership in a team? I mean, I think we'd all agree, doing it well is important as a team success. But what's your angle?
I think like if you're asking me about team leadership, I think it's important to like firstly have a good culture, basically like within the team and like around. I think if you are trying to be a good mentor, or if you're trying to like make sure everybody in the team works well together, I think you have to first obviously identify what are the like the strongest spots everybody has as well, and like how they can work together. I think it requires a lot of like like understanding people as well, like having that understanding of how your team is structured, what are their key skill sets, what is the like the what is the goal of the team, why we have been built, why this has been created. Then I think like what is expectation, for example, from the team itself. I think those some components are required. I think like if you ask me about like how what does it take to be a better leader, is also like understanding people better, giving them the right opportunities as well, and like obviously maybe also opportunities for them to grow, because like that is really really crucial. and then like giving them small like part in parts mentorship where they need it, like essentially like if they need at all. And then if you focus on the technical aspects, I think and like different, like I think problem solving is something I really really value. I like people who are solution oriented, because like I think like we all know there are problems, but I think if your mind is like positive and you think in the light that, oh, this is a problem, even if it's a technical problem or like it's a code, you would have to like, you can really really think in that different light. So having a positive problem solving mindset is like really the first key to finding like the solution to anything, like in like projects or technical space, because uh those people like they really really excel faster, because in their mind they're always thinking, how do I solve it?
No,
Because
brilliant.
their lens is that constantly their laser focus is on that thing. I think that really I've seen works very very well in teams.
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah. Well, and unfortunately, we're starting to get close on time. I'm going to skip maybe a question
Yeah.
and say, ask you what you see as the future of AI. I mean, are the AIs going to become our leaders? Are all the humans going to be following, like the perfect AI leader? How do you think it's going to evolve over the next 2, 5, 10 years?
I'm sure it will evolve. Will it will like how that will transform is, I think we'll certainly get advanced models for sure, like way more advanced models. The technology will obviously evolve a lot more and become sophisticated. I think in terms of the way we work will definitely change. I think AI will definitely become like a part of the way technology currently exists. I mean, in like a lot of places still today, I think AI is being used, but the way it is used is being different. And like some people are using it for more building it, some people are using it more like as a the user, like just using it for like getting information and stuff. So I think it will evolve. I think we'll definitely surpass the era of AI agents, and we'll have more something probably solid in the world of agentic AI, because right now it's like people are talking about it, they're building things, but it's just still like like there's an evolution phase basically going on.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's gonna be here. I think we will see a lot of transformation in the way technology operates. And like AI will become one of the key component probably like of the way we build things in the future. I mean, it's still today, actually, if you look at it in some or like little or more capacity, but it will be more and more embedded in the way we operate, because the biggest reason why like AI will be there is because large language models, they are valuable for a lot of people, because they have a lot of information and data. And every business in this world cares about ROI. And like if you find the right use case and build the right system, like you can get good ROI on these systems basically. But it's just about building the right thing. I think that's like how I look at it. But yeah, definitely there's gonna be revolution. It's here. It's gonna be here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely feeling like I was talking to people last night, and I don't really code anymore. I've transitioned into an AI first developer. Whether the output that I'm producing is better or worse, I think remains, will it's an ongoing struggle. But you're not particularly worried about very, very advanced models being a lot more intelligent than humans and, exceeding I mean, it's no one's got a crystal ball, but do you see like really serious disruption to society? If like, I mean, it's one thing for the models to get better and us to get better at using them. What about they get to the point where the model's like, I'm bored. Like, why? No, okay, I'm going to go off and run, France because that's give me a challenge, and then these humans who are running France, they're not doing any. I mean, I'm not picking up UK, France, wherever. You're not particularly. You think that AI will kind of like stay, in the box, so to speak, that it's a thing that we use rather than ever it becoming a thing that uses us.
Um, in the box, I think it's kind of like you can like have a debate around it or agree to disagree. I think I would say I don't think exactly it will stay in a box. I mean, if you are saying about, hey, will we have robots flying like roaming on the road, or like maybe like AI is like leading a country or something like that, I think that's like a very, I mean, it's a very far-fetched thing at the moment. I think like I mean, I'm looking at AI right now from like a lot more like technology point of view, a tool basically in my big toolkit, I would
Mm,
say. I think will we give it more like intelligence will we give, because at the end of the they are being trained on our data, right? Like they are like they get that data and they like train from them. So um I frankly like I think it is a very far-fetched thing at the moment. I think we will first see a lot more transition in the way systems are being built, and then maybe a lot more ahead. I think I don't like necessarily see it as like the first thing on my mind right now, like about like, yeah, because like, will they surpass human intelligence? Will they not surpass human intelligence? I mean, people are trying to solve exam questions using large language models, and I've seen like tons and tons of talks and articles about it. And like, like, um, it's interesting that they can solve it faster than probably a human does. But like, will we just like change everything? I think that's like for the time to tell more than us, I would say.
Yeah, it's very obviously very difficult to predict the future when
Yeah.
things are changing so fast. Well, that brings us into our final question, which is, what does it all mean? This life, the universe, and everything. And of course, it's like we're not necessarily expecting you to give us the answer for everyone. Although, hey, go for it if you want to. But I think the question is a lot more. Is about what gives meaning for you. I mean, whether that's religious or you think we're all living in a simulation, or just like, this is why I get up in the morning. Yeah, what does how do you make sense of the universe we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I think creating a positive impact, and I work in like I've like spent initial years of my career in engineering and like and then in data science. I can say like creating products or working on things like that make life human life better is basically how we look at things, like creating positive adoption of technology, and then like the way it's basically being like used by humans. I think if you ask me like about universe and everything, I would say like for me it's really important that like whatever things I'm a part of, it has some meaningful value to it. And I think like no matter what project or like things I'm a part of, I always try to create like the best possible outcome for that. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's how I find meaning, I would say, in most of the things I do.
Lovely, fantastic, wonderful. And Shubhangi, it's been a fantastic conversation. Where can people find out more about you? Obviously we can put the a LinkedIn link in the
Yep.
notes. It's kind of de rigueur these days. But do you have any upcoming events or activities you'd like to share or promote?
Yeah, sure. Like I'm speaking next week in Nantes, France. I'm gonna be giving a talk on data modeling.
Wonderful.
So yeah, like if somebody wants to connect with me, yeah, please feel free to be there, or like, you can always attend my talks online. They are recorded and they will find somewhere on the YouTube. Yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Well, maybe we can get links to that upcoming talk and the YouTube links in the show notes. Well, thanks everyone. That wraps up this episode of AI Leadership. If you'd like to be on the podcast or join the Rebel AI community that it all started from, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Sam Joseph. That's sam@neurogrid.com. And please do follow us on Spotify. Apparently that makes all the difference to the algorithms. And of course, you can add questions and comments there, or just DM me on LinkedIn, and we'll be in your ears again real soon. Finally, big thanks to our guest today, Shubhangi Goyal.
Thank you.